I'm Dr. Karen Kuralt from the Department of Rhetoric and Writing. This is my colleague, Dr. Lakeshia Jones from the Department of Mathematics and Statistics. And we're partnering up for this workshop because in order to be competitive for a graduate research fellowship from the NSF, you have to be able to have two key components. Number one is the application is extremely essay driven. So the quality of your writing is paramount in terms of you getting a chance to receive this money. And second of all, then you also have to have an excellent scientific background and a strong research plan in order to compete. It's worth the effort, though, that you'll go in to do this, because here's what's in it for you. If you win the award, it's a $34,000 stipend for 3 years of your graduate education with a $12,000 tuition allowance. You're eligible to receive a $5,000 International Research Award. You have a huge competitive advantage applying against other people at top schools. And if you choose to go to UALR for your graduate program, your application fees are waived. But don't just take it from me. We actually have a winner of this award from UA Little Rock who's here to kind of talk to you about how he, with the help of Dr. Jones, actually succeeded in winning this major national award. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you John Surratt.
I started here last year as a graduate student, and when I started on this path to apply for this fellowship, I'll be honest, a lot of well-meaning people told me constantly that no one from UALR would ever get this. But I tried anyway, because it's not just about the money. There's a lot of prestige with this award. And I'm talking about to the point where I contacted a graduate coordinator at a top 30 school, and the first thing he said was, "Do you want me to get you accepted for this fall?" And this was in May. So if you get this award, it raises people's eyebrows. Even if you get an honorable mention and do not get the money, you are still one of the elite few in the nation. Over 12,000 people apply for this, and only 2,000 awards are made. And only, I believe, another 1,000 honorable mentions are named, aren't they?
That's correct.
So that puts you immediately in the top 25% of the top 50% of students applying in the entire nation. But it's a 5-page essay, it's 2 essays, and these are probably the 5 most important pages you will ever write in your life. So it's not something you can take lightly. I had, over the previous summer, a 10-week internship. And when I was not working, I spent almost all of my off time working on my statements. There is a 3-page personal statement where you explain who you are and why you deserve this. And then there's a 2-page research statement. I spent my entire off time for 10 weeks revising and revising. When I got back to school in August, I didn't do a revision every week, but I did one about every 2 weeks. By the end of it, I had almost 20 revisions for my statements done. It was incredibly exhausting, and by the time I was done, I didn't care if I got it or not. I was just happy for it to be over with. So it's really something that you have to take it seriously, because if you look at the stats on this, about 25% of the people that get this go to Yale or Harvard. So you're not competing against just anybody. You're competing against the best of the best who've been spoon-fed good opportunities for their entire lives. So we are coming at a bit of a disadvantage at a state school, but at the same time, it's not a disadvantage that you can't overcome. So it's very important to leverage who you are, how you got to this point in your life. Anything that makes your story unique, that makes you stand out, is going to get their attention. You want to get their attention. You want to be the person that they read this app and they say, "I have never read an app. I've never read about a student like this before." Because once you get their attention, you're on the list. The way I've heard they do this, and it's hard to get because they're not supposed to talk about it, but they have 3 piles when they go through these applications. They have a yes, this person is going to get the award pile. They have a this person deserves an award, but not as much as the others. And a this one's garbage pile. So it's not just this big continuum over, wow, I have to outperform all these people. You just have to get their attention so that they put you in one of those top 2 piles, and that keeps you in the running. My senior year, I started working with Dr. Jones. And she had me write a practice research proposal. This is how I got started on this whole NSF Fellowship. She said, John, you need to start looking for funding. You need to start getting prepared for writing proposals. So my senior year, I researched some ideas that I'd be interested in, and I wrote my first proposal, which incidentally enough got me an internship with NASA. And in this process, once I got my proposal done, Dr. Jones says, okay, now who will you send this to? And that led me to the NSF Fellowship. So this process for me actually was more than a year long. I started more than a year before the application was due, which is the best way to do it, and that's why y'all are here now, right? So I had a year's worth of practice going into it. I was constantly bugging people to read it. My wife hates the NSF now because I don't know how many hundreds of times she had to read my essays. Dr. Jones, how many times did you have to read my essays?
Probably 1,000,001.
Okay. In addition to that, Dr. Jones was also kind enough. She put together a small group of people who had experience with NSF to read over my stuff and give me some feedback. And that was a blind situation, so I still don't know who they are, but they gave me really good advice. Another component is you need 5 letters of reference. You only have to have 3, but you have spots on your application to choose 5 people, and I advise you to choose 5 people because you can prioritize these, put them in the order that you would like them read. If somebody misses the deadline, then they get bumped from the list and the next person in priority moves up. So if you have all 5 of your slots filled, then that means 2 people can drop the ball and you're still good. So between my 5 recommenders, the 2 people Dr. Jones found, Dr. Jones herself and my wife, and a few of my friends, I had probably about a dozen people going over this with me multiple times. And I'm not going to say it's perfect. I go back over it now when I'm talking to people and when they're applying, and I look at it and say, that whole paragraph just needs to go. So it's one of those things, in writing we always say that your baby's never ready to go out in the world. You just have to kick it out there eventually. It's very much that case. And one piece of advice I have in the writing is do not burn yourself out, because if you really invest yourself in this, you're going to try to burn yourself out when you come down to the finish line. You're going to keep wanting to look over it again, make that final adjustment, and it's really easy to mess things up when you come down to the deadline like that.
So we're going to prepare you to write these 2 essays that he's talked about. So there's the personal statement, which is 3 pages. I actually find it kind of ironic the way that they've allotted the page numbers here, because most of the people that I work with in this program would rather write more pages about their research statement and fewer pages about their personal statement. Some of them are like, what do you mean I have to talk about me? That's like not even comfortable. What do you want to know about me? And the way I explain it to people is that it's kind of like going on Shark Tank. Have any of you seen the show Shark Tank on ABC? Okay, so you know that an entrepreneur comes in and they have the 5 sharks and they're pitching their idea for a business to the sharks. Well, yes, the sharks often make a decision on, do they have a sound business model? So for them, the business model is the same as your research plan. But they also make a decision based on, do they like how that entrepreneur presents themselves? Because sometimes they'll have somebody come in and they say, look, your business plan is completely out in left field, but I believe in you as a person. I think you're the kind of person who can succeed, so for that reason, I'm willing to make a financial investment. And really, that's what you're trying to get these people to do here. You're asking the judges of this competition to make a $35,000 investment in you as a leader in your particular discipline. And so for them, part of that is convincing them that you are the kind of person, first of all, who's going to make it through graduate school, because they do not want to waste this money, right? It's a huge chunk of money. So they want to make sure that they're putting it on somebody who's actually going to succeed and make it through their graduate program. Ideally, somebody who's going to be out there in the world doing conference presentations and publishing. And then they don't just want a researcher, they also want somebody who's going to be capable of making community connections and being a leader in their field. So really, they're looking for the total package. And this personal statement is where you're going to have the opportunity to make the case that you are indeed that kind of person that they should make an investment in. And then the research statement, which is the part that you're probably more comfortable with and that you will wish many times they gave you more than 2 pages to write. But no, you must condense your research plan into a very concise 2-page statement that describes a project you want to conduct during your graduate studies. Now, before you get too worried, because you may be like, but what if I just barely am beginning to realize what kind of a project I might want to do at that next level? That's okay. You're not pinned down in stone to saying that you have to do this exact project when you get into graduate school. But what they're looking to see is how you think about things. That is, do you know how to plan a research project at this particular stage? Are you capable of identifying a problem that's important enough that needs to be addressed? Do you have a reasonable way to approach that problem? Do you know what kinds of equipment and resources you would need to execute the solution? So there's where you're showing that you can identify an important issue and plan a viable research project. Both of the essays have to appeal to 2 criteria. Number 1 is intellectual merit, which is, as it says on the slide, show that you and your project have potential to advance knowledge in the field. So they're not looking for you to summarize the work of past researchers. Let's make that clear. They are looking for you to advance knowledge in the field, which means you need to make some kind of original contribution. And then the second thing is what they call the broader impacts, which is that you have to show that you and your project have the potential to benefit society. So again, they're not looking for stuff that's pie in the sky theoretical. They're looking for stuff that has practical applications and that's going to help people in some way. The reason that we created this program is that, as John mentioned, it takes about a year to do a really good job putting these together. Part of what you have to do is you need to look at what other winners have written so that you kind of get a sense of what the ballpark is that you're shooting for. And then, as he said, it's all revise, revise, revise. So we're going to start early. The last cohort just turned in their essays last month. So we're starting you guys thinking about it this month, starting to draft at the beginning of next year, and then working on it for 10 consecutive months, where we'll meet with you intensively for 6 weeks, and then we'll meet with you a couple of times again as you get close to the deadline. Yes, sir?
So is that a class or it's a workshop?
Yeah, so it's a 6-week workshop, which Dr. Jones is going to show you the layout of. And we're going to start it about 2 weeks into the spring semester. So we're going to give you a couple of weeks to kind of get settled with your classes, figure out what's going on there, and then we'll, for everybody who chooses to participate, we'll look at a time that meets my schedule, her schedule, and all the schedules of the participants, and we'll meet 60 to 90 minutes a week for 6 weeks consecutive. And we'll be done right after spring break so that you can have the rest of your semester to focus on your classes. We're going to teach you how to write with the needs of the judges in mind, because one of the mistakes that we see novice fellowship writers make is that they're writing too much in their own heads. It's like when I have students who are preparing resumes and getting ready to go out into the workplace. They write their resume thinking about, oh, these are my credentials that I must communicate. But they don't think about what it's like for the judges. So for example, we know the judging takes place over a very condensed amount of time. They read literally thousands of essays in those 3 days. Can you imagine the fatigue? Like, we'll actually give you an experience of reading what it's like to be a judge, because we'll bring some sample essays for you to look at. And we're only going to make you go through like 6 or 8. And you will be tired after the 6 to 8. And suddenly you will realize, oh my gosh, what if I had to spend a day reading hundreds of these? What would it take to get my attention? That's going to be a very valuable insight. And then finally, be prepared to invest that time to organize, revise, and polish. Because that's what takes it from being an okay essay that might get in the middle pile, maybe, to being something that's going to be at the top of the middle pile or in the top selection. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to turn over the time to Dr. Jones, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about how we're going to structure these workshops.
All right, so as Dr. Kuralt already said, we're going to start in the spring, just after the start of the semester. We're going to give you time to kind of get settled in your classes and really learn what your schedule is going to look like. So the dates that you'll see here are very tentative, and they may change depending on the schedules of those who actually decide to participate. But for the first week, around about the week of February 11th, is to start reading these statements. And we're going to start with the personal statements. Reading the statements just to kind of see how those who have been awarded before approach them? What do they include? What angles do they take? What specific experiences or situations do they address? Exactly what those awarded letters look like. And then the second week, on or about the week of the 18th, just starting to put some ideas on paper about your own personal statements. Doesn't have to be anything well laid out or a very neat draft, but just some ideas of things that you might want to include, a certain perspective or angle that you might want to take in describing your own personal experience and your own personal walk. This part is what allows the judges to really get to know who you are. And then lastly, where we actually come together to start putting together your actual statement. Of course, anything during the spring semester is going to be of draft form. It's going to change several times between then and the fall when it's actually due to be submitted. But this is to kind of get you started, to get you thinking about what to actually put in there and how you might have the greatest impact on the hearts and minds of the judges. And then we will switch modes in March to start talking about your research statements. Again, 3 workshops. But first one, week of March 4th, again, just kind of perusing some of the ones that have been awarded to see what was included, what kind of approach they took, what sorts of, or how, really the biggest thing with the research statements is determining how much do you need to include, because again, we have to condense it down to 2 pages. So whether you're at the beginning stages or whether you already have results, you still only have 2 pages. So just navigating those waters. And then week of March 11th, just coming up with some bullet points that you may want to put in your own statement. And then the week of the 25th, actually coming up with a draft statement. All right, with regards to the mentor role and responsibilities, this person is going to be very important, going to be somebody who you are going to need to work very closely with throughout this process. So you want to make sure that you're choosing somebody that you know that you will have ease in working with. So you want somebody who obviously is going to be available, who can meet with you and kind of answer questions. Early morning, late night, just around the clock kind of questions for you with regards to particularly your research statement and just kind of getting that part molded the way that it needs to be. This person will be your timeline support. They're going to help you make sure that you get all those recommendation letters in on time. All right, the deadlines. So the first one that's listed there is for us. We will work with you through the spring. I'm hoping to also maintain contact with all of the participants throughout the summer, because you will be working and revising and rewriting and making all sorts of changes all throughout the summer. Coming back in the fall, we hope to have our last and final round of feedback about your statements and your application in total in September. And then from there, the dates for 2019 are listed for each of the different disciplines. So for life sciences and geosciences, there is a deadline date of October 21st. And all the others follow as you see. And in case you're not ready for next year and you're thinking about 2020, those deadlines are listed as well. All right, so at the end of all of this, those who actually go forth and apply, afterwards, we will take a look at all the applications and we will rank them. And all of the undergrad students will be eligible to be reimbursed for the GRE registration, and the application fee is also waived. And then graduate students will be eligible to receive travel support up to $250. Doesn't sound like much, but when you're talking travel, every little bit helps. Okay, so other incentives to actually participate and follow through with the submission. So moving forward, if you decide that you actually want to participate, you've spoken with your mentor or identified someone who can be your mentor, that's the most important part, and you actually want to go forward and participate, we will send out, just make sure that we have your contact information on the sign-in sheet. We'll send out the sign-up sheet through Google Forms, Just fill that out, and we will, if you notify us on that form, who will be your mentor, we will contact your mentor as well to have them send in a letter to us, basically just saying we have their support as well, in, going through this process. And then we will notify you by the 11th to let you know, okay, you're on board, we're going to start working in the spring.